for our final experience together on drums, because right after this we're going to go take a yoga class again.
Yes.
Yoga class number 4 in 4 days. Man, what a crazy experience that's been.
It's been incredible. I mean, I've never done anything like this.
I haven't either.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate yoga drum hang. You should set something up like this.
A retreat, yeah. Yoga, drumming, great food.
Yeah. Man, I think we're onto something.
Yeah. As long as there's no gigs after it.
Right. Or make it part of the program.
Make it part of the program,
gigs
right.
every night.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah.
So we're going to have Mark show us 3 grooves that are important to know. 3 things that you need to have in your bag of tricks so you can survive in a lot of situations. You might get called for a gig and you have to play 4 different styles during that night, and you may not know all of them. So let's take a look and see what Mark has for us on these 3 important grooves to know.
Okay, I've got 2 in mind, and the third I'm just going to have to improvise.
Great. Improvise, that's an important groove.
Just play. Well, I think one of the greatest drum lessons I ever had was from Paquito de Rivera, who said, "Coño, just play something that works."
Yeah, right. That's easy.
Yeah. So one of the grooves I'd like to discuss, it's really 2, but it's 1 if you really look at it. Okay, what it is samba and bossa nova. As Bernard Purdy said, samba and the bossa are so close, most of us don't know the difference.
Bossa and the samba are so close, most of us don't know the difference.
But what I'd like to say is that it's really the same rhythm, it's just a different attitude. So Rosa Passos, who you should check out if you want to hear some great samba and bossa nova, she said, bossa is like holding a baby. One that's not wiggling around and trying to get loose.
Right.
So, whereas samba is more like, okay, let's toss the baby back and forth at a street party.
Right.
So, samba basically is coming from 2 instruments, very close to what I have here. One is the surdo, that's the bass drum, and it looks like a giant floor tom. It's played with a big mallet and the hand. So the sound is, you can do this on a floor tom, and 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1. So you notice I'm closing the sound on 1, 1, holding the head so it doesn't vibrate, and then releasing it on 2, 2. And I play a little pickup with the other hand just to give it some groove. A 1, a 2, a 1. So when you hear bass players playing samba, that's what you should be hearing. Same thing for if someone's playing solo piano, the left hand, solo guitar, the thumb. That's the root of everything.
So it might translate into duration of note, short, long, short,
Yeah.
short, long.
Exactly. And sometimes you can simplify it and just play short, long, short, long. So, for example, if I play this bass drum just with a dead stroke and then with a rebound stroke, it sounds like 1, 2, 1, 2. So the first beat, you'll notice, is really soft. I'm doing that on purpose because it's more of a closing rather than another big hit. So if I speed that up, I can play something like. So, no matter what bass drum you have, even if there's a little muffling in it, you can kind of get a difference in tone between the dead stroke and the rebound.
Right.
And that's kind of, I remember the first time I tried that, I was messing around with that, and I did it on a Brazilian gig. And Cidinho Teixeira, the Brazilian keyboardist on the gig, he just turned around and just flipped. So I kept it in my repertoire.
Yeah. Now, of course, we were recording with a muffled bass drum for our purposes earlier, but you would play with a more open-tuned bass drum. Nothing in it, maybe even.
I don't know. I usually just come to the gig and see what's there.
I mean, you were able to control that. I heard the 2 pitches and 2 tones
That's
with a muffled
the
bass
intention.
drum.
Yeah.
Because you're a master.
Well, but usually it might be a muffled bass drum. It might be an open bass drum. I mean, you never know what you're going to get. If it's an 18 with 2 heads, no muffling, then I might take a small towel and just roll it up and put it between the pedal and the head at the lowest point I possibly can, not to choke it off, but just to control it a little bit. I know some jazz drummers would be like, oh, that's some suburban stuff, But sometimes you need that because like playing with Eliane Elias, it was a jazz gig, but it was also heavy on samba, and I didn't want to bury Mark Johnson because he's one of the best bass players in the world. So I just took, just kind of like took it easy on the volume of the bass drum, and you could still have it open, but just try to control it somehow. Okay, so back to the surdo. Standard kind of bass drum pattern is more like this. Now I'm playing this heel down. If I played it heel up. So you notice a difference. If I play a heel up, I get do-do, do-do, do-do. But if I play heel down, I get boom, 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 boom. So really, what's right is what's right for you, what's right for the music. So you just make a choice and just go with it. But usually I play heel down because it's easy, and in most of the situations I'm playing, I don't need to like really power through it. I'm mostly blending with acoustic instruments like piano and guitar, etc. But sometimes there's a big band or something like that, and you have to just power through it. So it just depends on how you're set up. And there's other surdo patterns. There are a couple of counter surdo patterns to this pattern. There's one that plays the open tone on 1, boom, ka-doom, ka-doom. So the effect is doom, ba-doom, ka-doom,
back and forth, right?
Almost like a bass line. And then there's one called cortador or surdo de corte. Cortar means to cut. So this sound is higher in pitch, and it just cuts through the frequencies of the other surdos. And it plays something like boom, 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 boom. It's more syncopated pattern that we kind of associate it with partido alto. So there's that. And then, so moving on, the other instrument is the tambourine. Not the tambourine that you shake, but the tambourine small drum like this. That sounds like tuck 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 tuck. So I'm making the movement as if I'm playing a tambourine. I mean, I could pick up probably one of those pads and do the same thing.
Right.
But basically, the effect is. So a very basic pattern you can play is, but you have to throw some variations in, otherwise it kind of gets stale. And that goes with anything you play. If you don't throw variations in, it starts to sound automatic, and that's when it gets really boring. Not that you have to go crazy and change it all the time, but you have to do some subtle variations. So I kind of sort of discovered a method for that. Anyway, if you put this all together, okay, so of course we need some hi-hat in here, so I'm going to play 16ths. Now the mistake a lot of people make is for people to accent all on the beat. As soon as I hit an upbeat up here, there's a clash. So what I do is I just play a subtle accent, all with a tip, and I play whatever I'm accenting here. So what I'm trying to get away from is the feeling of an ostinato on the top end. And that goes for the ride too, which I'll get to.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So if I speed it up. Something like that. And so you can play the exact same rhythms for bossa that you can for samba, and it works out just fine. You just have to tailor it to the tune, that's really what it's about anyway. If you're playing a bossa, like a lot of times I asked a student to play a bossa and they would play. Okay, that sounds fine for like 2 bars, but then what?
Right, yeah.
kind of gets to sound like one of those machines that you can just press a button.
Yeah.
So what I suggest is playing that first pattern I played on the tambourine, but then at random subtracting notes out of that. Mm-hmm. So it'd be like. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you have something that's fresh and in the moment, but also consistent, more or less. And I figure, well, if you can do that for that, why not do that for like a funk bass drum pattern or something like that? Mm-hmm. You know, just like play different parts of the rhythm, but don't play the whole thing all the time. And then the other consideration is the phrasing of this. So far I have this phrase on the downbeat. But sometimes the music is on the other side. So I sort of discovered by accident that sometimes my pattern was feeling good with the band and sometimes it wasn't. I was wondering why that was, and I found out it was the anticipation point. So if I play that first, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Makes sense to, if you're going to play a fill, anticipate out of it. I mean, there's exceptions to everything.
Yeah. Sometimes
the music is not that way for the whole tune. Sometimes it switches. It's a little bit looser like that in Brazilian music.
What's the I've always wondered this, and I've kind of made up my own belief of the presence of the concept of clave in bossa nova. Is there a 3-2 and a 2-3? Because the bossa nova clave that you played in the beginning with the young student plays, that kind of has a it's kind of like a 3-2 rumba clave.
Yeah. I mean, there's nobody really talks about clave in Brazilian music, but
so the phrasing doesn't necessarily stick to the key.
No. Everything else is, nothing really relates to a clave as it does in Latin music.
Right. Okay.
Like a Cuban music.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because I was thinking about this morning, like varying the groove, and then everything sort of varying at the same time. Mm-hmm. But in Afro-Cuban, like what we call mambo out of convenience, son, more or less, we might be playing a cascada and clave, and we might just be sticking with that. But There's enough variation in the other percussion, and if we're playing alone, we have to vary another part of it to keep it interesting.
Right.
But the basic thing is still there, and the basic clave is still there. But in bossa, there's no necessity for playing a clave in the music.
Right.
The music is not written.
So the choice to go back to that simple student rim shot cross stick pattern that you played, you could go or you go
Yeah.
Either one of those.
Yeah.
But
and it's totally
the
valid.
important part is
If it fits the tune, it's totally valid. So I can't say it's not valid to play that. But
so fitting the music is the most important part of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think there was a recording with Antonio Carlos Jobim and Sting doing "Once I Loved," and Paulo Braga, one of the greatest Brazilian drummers, bar none, was playing. Or maybe he had a backbeat or something like that. I can't remember. But sometimes that's just, sometimes he plays. And sometimes that sounds the best, even in samba. Sometimes I do that, and things just gel.
Right.
Things just kind of, it's like a magnet.
Yeah.
You know, everything is like.
Well, some of
together.
those like Motown tunes are cut
Yeah.
the whole time. It's quarter notes.
Yeah.
And it feels so good. So I wonder if that's that human thing of regardless of the culture, there's something about that is okay that makes us feel
good. Yeah. So it's very basic. So then when you get to the ride cymbal in samba, you know, I hear a lot of people playing ostinatos. Okay, that could be okay. But the problem I have with that is if they try to play a 2-bar phrase here and just this ostinato here. Because it's not on the same page.
Right.
This is supporting this, and there's nothing supporting this. So what I do is it's as if I'm sitting here playing a tambourine, just jamming.
Yeah.
You know, and this goes with it. I can't play as many. I mean, I could play as many notes, but it kind of wouldn't really sound that great. So I can play more notes here and play the basic phrase here, and have this here. Now, if I really want to play a shorter phrase here, like an ostinato, sometimes what I do is play a shorter phrase here. So there's a groove I like sometimes. If I just reverse what I played, I play something like. See, now it's kind of agreeing because it's the same length, and it's kind of supporting one another.
Right. It feels like it's one thing.
Right, rather than just autopilot and then play a phrase here.
What is it why do we fall into these ostinato ruts, do you think?
I think maybe somebody used it on a kind of a fusion thing, and people listened to it and thought, oh, that's samba, you know, without checking out. And that's my big thing. You got to check out the roots of all this stuff.
Right.
And then you get the feeling of it. Like, for example, calypso. Maybe I'll do calypso for another
group.
There's a percussion group in Trinidad called Laventille Rhythm Section. And I don't know how many people outside of Trinidad know them, but a student turned me on to them because he had grown up in Trinidad. And it is just the sickest groove. I don't know. It'll groove you into bad health, you know what I mean? And these guys are playing all kinds of drums and African percussion, and it's the same as calypso, basically, rhythmically. So if I have a calypso gig or something like that, I'll listen to a bunch of Laventille Rhythm Section just to get that inspiration. And then I'll come and just try to generate that feeling with what I play here. And that works with a lot of different things, you know. Like I was working with the WDR Big Band, and Pernell Saturnino, a great percussionist, was on the gig. And he gave me a CD of Rhapsodia Rumbera, where all the old rumberos came together and formed this new style. And actually, Horacio El Negro had given me that tape of that years ago, and I thought, oh wow, this is great. And I was listening to it like crazy, and then we got on the gig, and he, somewhere in the gig, he said, oh, you've been listening to a lot of rumba, huh? You know, just because it's just became such an influence. Yeah. So really, whatever you're drinking is gonna come out.
That's right. You're right. In your case, beets.
The best, the best juices.
Beet juice, then celery,
beetle juice,
and lemons. I have another question about samba and bossa, because I don't know if this is a misconception, but a lot of times it seems like students think that bossa is slow and samba is fast.
Right, that's a good one.
Can you have a fast bossa and can you have a slow samba?
Well, I think bossas go up to kind of medium tempo. I mean, maybe not even that fast, but samba can be anything from really fast to super slow. And the slow samba is called samba canção, which means literally tired samba.
Wow, really? That slow?
Oh yeah, It can be as slow as any bossa, really.
Wow.
It just depends on what attitude you play with it, and there can be anything in between.
So
Like
the
you can
big
play
two, does that kind of tell you this is samba? Like, boom.
Yeah,
Is that something that says, oh, we're playing samba?
Yeah, and sometimes it's an orchestration. Like if there's some percussion, different percussion, a go, something like that.
Okay.
But if it's more subtle with guitar and shaker and very light percussion, then it's usually bossa.
Okay.
But you can play a bossa nova tune with a samba attitude and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So
Right.
But if you listen to the roots samba stuff, you hear more simple chord progressions and heavy percussion. Technically speaking, when you hear bossa, you hear more chord tensions and a simpler bass line.
Right.
And then when you hear choro, which is another form in that neighborhood, you hear a lot of counterpoint, and you hear a lot of counterpoint in the lower register. Like they have 7-string guitars they used. So it's not just, it's more like, it's always a counterpoint. Everything's contrapuntal in choro. And chorar means to cry. So it's almost like very expressive,
Right.
Oh, but probably has relation to Portuguese fado, but I don't really know much about that, so
Okay.
I'll shut my mouth.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Man,
Yeah.
the whole idea of not unison, but like outlining the pattern here, if you're playing 16th notes and accenting based on that pattern is so great.
Yeah, and it can be a subtle accent too. It doesn't have to be a really,
Right.
really big one. It doesn't have to be like the shank of the stick as opposed to the...
It's almost like just
Yeah.
adding a timbre quality to this
Yeah,
to just give a little brightness to
Yeah.
to the click.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's important for everybody to balance, the different voices going on at the same
Right.
time, because sometimes they might be real light on the hat, but like kick is like bam, bam. It's like,
Right.
okay, take it easy. Let's remix this a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's very popular in college, or maybe even later in high school, to do samba foot ostinatos. Boom, tickle, dum, tickle, dum, tickle, dum. A ride pattern, and then read Ted Reed's syncopation book.
Oh,
or,
yeah.
to work out some coordination and phrasing concepts.
Yeah.
But because of that, we go into this motor thing of don't is what samba becomes for
Right.
a lot of people.
Right.
And when the bass player might be playing, eventually you learn that you can go get go, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So again, it probably just comes to hearing the music, listening to it enough to go, yes, there are some rules we learn in academic settings.
Right.
If they're not studying with someone like you, the general teacher is going to say, boom, chicka, boom, ding, digga, ding, da, 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 or whatever pattern here, that's your samba.
Right.
And then
Right.
you go off into the world, and there's how you play your samba.
Right.
But again, listening to the roots of it, understanding what it is as
Learning repertoire.
learning the repertoire.
Yeah. Like I can't remember his name. This guy from Michigan State University. He said the paper don't swing.
Yeah.
So I feel like the book is the last thing you should look at. Mm-hmm. I've played so many gigs where they called off the tune in Portuguese, and I would be like, huh? They just say samba.
All right.
But after a while, I kind of started recognizing the titles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I knew what they were going to do, and I knew the tune, and it became like, it was kind of like standard repertoire. So on any type of gig where you play samba, if you're playing with Brazilian players, you can learn the repertoire, you can write down, you just have to understand a little bit of Portuguese. The first time I went to Brazil by myself, which was the second time I went to Brazil, a singer invited me down, and she was taking me around to clubs, and around 1994, and she took me to this club, and there was a band there, and she convinced them to let me sit in. And these guys are like, "Who's this guy?" You know. And so they called the Stevie Wonder tune, probably like, "I Just Called to Say I Love You" or something that I couldn't destroy.
Right.
And so, you know, or "You Are the Sunshine of My Life."
Sure.
That's what it was.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you know, playing bossa, and I'm playing, you know, just trying to groove and get a good vibe going, and they start smiling and start to warm up, and then they say, "Okay, what do you want to play?" I said, "How about Bala Kumbala?" And they was like, "Oh, you know that tune? All right." They started burning on it, up samba, and then people started dancing. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to live.
Yeah, right. Job well done. There's dancing. Isn't that interesting in that art form? If the dancing is happening, you're doing your job.
Exactly.
But we've gotten so intellectual with jazz that if someone's dancing, they aren't listening to the music.
Yeah, but sometimes you can't help but dance. Like
You've got to move, right?
I remember doing this gig at Smalls, and we finished the gig, and there were people talking to me, and I thought it was...
Right.
And then Bill Stewart gets up to play, and I'm like, this guy has perfect time.
Yeah.
And all I could do was start dancing to what he was playing.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, there's a dance in his playing.
like, I couldn't stand still.
Yeah.
You're like, man.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Jazz is dance music. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, whether people are sitting and bobbing their heads or whatever. I was fortunate to do jobbing dates here because we had to make them dance to get overtime.
Right.
So that's why I learned to make people dance. You know?
Yeah. And that's a good lesson just in general. I mean, the music, not necessarily literally dancing, but something that allows people to feel moved by the music.
Yeah.
You have to perform it in a way that you are coming from a deeper emotional space than just the intellectual, I know the rules of this style.
Right. Yeah, that's from up here.
Here are the patterns that work for this song.
Right.
Instead of making music. I was going to ask also, because you were saying varying this, and of course my question about clave, in Cuban music, the clave is sort of a rule that has to remain, and if you want to turn the clave around, you play a phrase of 9 bars or whatever, or 7 bars. So the clave stays.
Yeah, the arrangement turns around.
But you were talking about varying what I would consider kind of the clave part of the groove in a musical way.
Yeah.
So are you responding to what's going on in the music and being counterpoint to what's going on? Like a baron player will kind of change the pitch of their drum as they're, as the melody of the fiddle or whatever is happening, they're kind of playing melodies on the drum.
Oh, cool.
Based on the actual music.
Yeah.
So you're not just playing patterns that feel good and things that work for your own body. You're actually trying to...
You're interacting.
You're being musical with it.
Oh, yeah. Like if I'm playing, if I'm comping on the cross stick, I'm listening to what the vocalist is singing, and I'm comping like a jazz player would comp.
Right.
Because if they really know the phrasing, then it's going to be consistent enough so that that basic tambourine and surdo fit.
Right.
But you can make leaps. You can play dotted notes until you get to the beginning of the phrase or whatever, and that's how you kind of make it levitate a little bit.
Yeah. So the jazz mind, the jazz mentality is that the idea of improvising as a unit, that is done in all forms of music nowadays.
Yeah.
Maybe? Do you think it was that way in tradition?
I think, yeah, I mean, there's always somebody in the percussion section that's going to be kind of improvising on top of it. I mean, all the way back from African percussion.
Right.
There's always a part that's so-called quinto part. That would be like the lead drum and rumba, interacting with the dancer. That's kind of important. The drummer's looking what the dancer's doing and playing something representing that.
Right.
And sometimes the dancer would try to trick the drummer. And sometimes there's a conversation going on.
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize that was happening until I started playing Bomba and Plena with William Cepeda, because he had a dancer on the gig.
Wow.
So that was an eye-opener, and now I look for that in whatever style there is. There's always that somewhere. So for us, it's wherever we want it to be. you
Right.
know?
So you're not just interacting with the musicians with your hearing, but you're having to maybe interact with a dancer, which you have to watch.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you could just listen.
Yeah. And I remember, just come to think of it, Kenwood Denard, he would have a dancer on some of his gigs.
Really?
Yeah, or his clinics.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Wow. I've seen his clinic, but I never saw a
Yeah,
dancer.
yeah.
That's
Maybe it was a long time ago, but there's at
amazing.
least a couple of clips where he has a dancer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So the groove number 2.
Yeah, so
It's,
that's Brazilian.
Yeah. So that's
Samba,
a little bit of the
bossa.
samba and bossa.
Okay.
The second groove that I thought of would be to kind of go back to my roots in Chicago
Okay.
and do a shuffle, more specifically like a swing shuffle. So I chose this because this is kind of where rock, jazz, and blues meet at the crossroads, because this would fit in any of those genres, really. Maybe volume-wise, if it were rock, I don't know. I was going to say maybe it'd be more powerful, but maybe not. It just depends on what era we're talking about, what tune we're talking about. So anyway, the shuffle would be in the left hand, and it'd be sort of a standard ride pattern in the right, and kind of a light feathering here, maybe more than light, slightly heavier, and then 2 and 4 here. So. So the thing to keep in mind with this is that every single limb is hitting on 2 and 4 at the same time. So as the people down at the AFM say, your strength is in your union. You know, even if you're playing at this volume, it's going to sound stronger if everything's playing together than if you were playing at this volume. It's just going to sound stronger because it's unified. So that's one point I want to make about that. And the other is, of course, the balance. Things have to be well balanced. You can't just have like a, I don't know. You could tailor it to the music. I was going to say maybe the kick could come up sometimes, maybe come down for certain things. Maybe for acoustic bass, you want to play a little softer. And also, I hear a lot of students, when I ask for a shuffle, sometimes they play. For some reason, I really like hearing that 1. Because it's the full shuffle.
Right.
And I think that's really important. And then another way, I was going to say to put some grease on it, but I guess in our case, to put some essential oil on it, would be to make it a dotted 8th and 16th. Because I hear a lot of people trying to play a triplet, but it's almost going a little too straight.
Straightens out a little too much.
Yeah. So if you make it a real true dotted 8th and 16th, when the rest of the band is playing a triplet feel and the soloist or vocalist is back phrasing, then you got this nice thing for that to rest on, and it's somehow the combination of that really, really works.
Yeah, I mean that's happening in the Texas shuffle.
Yeah, which I don't really know anything about.
Where the drummer and the bass player may be playing very triplet oriented stuff, and the one of the guitarists might be going deek 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 deek.
Oh,
almost straight, almost triplet, but the go go do ga do do go ga da dick 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 dick.
Oh, wow!
And you get this huge groove.
That's amazing.
But everyone has to remain in their role, which is a hard one to learn.
Yeah.
The fun part is the guitar part.
Right.
And so you might want to play that with them, but then all of a sudden you lose that tension.
Wow.
So to maintain your role, and then usually it's the guitar player or the pianist who
Oh man, that's amazing.
And it just like fattens it up a lot.
Yeah.
There's so many shuffles, like Texas, Kansas City, the Chicago shuffle.
Yeah, right. When you were talking about the guitar part, that kind of reminded me, there's a groove in Colombian music called cumbia, where it's primarily straight parts, but then the main soloist, the allegre drum, is swinging. But the combination just works like like a charm.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna miss a yoga class? Uh-oh, it's 5 minutes.
Is it really? Dang it. Why do we do this? Why do we get so carried away when we're talking about drums?
Because we're having fun. Well, we'll just do it after, right?
Yeah, we'll just do it after.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, so I guess we just got done talking about shuffle.
Are you wearing a different shirt?
No, this is the same one.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
We just did a yoga class. And
yeah, I get sweat stains.
we probably have this glow around it now. Man, that was hard. Why was it hard again? I thought for sure we're going to have a nice, easy...
Maybe it was because it's the last day I'm here and,
She's trying to show off.
See you, Mark.
Yeah, right.
Take this. Take this with you. Remember me.
Oh, my gosh. If I have to do this one more time...
You're right.
Wow.
With your eyes closed.
Yeah, right. Finding your balance.
Man, try playing drums with your eyes closed, too.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to read charts that way. But, so I guess I'll talk a little bit. Maybe I'll divide it up into... I'll just talk about general Caribbean music and...
Cool. Great. Yeah.
Calypso, Afro-Cuban, Puerto Rican. I mean, it kind of goes on a little bit, so I'll try to make everything more concise.
Good.
But people ask the difference between Calypso and Soca, and really when you come down to it, they're kind of interchangeable. I mean, Soca happened a little bit later, but there are tons of different Calypso grooves and tons of different Soca grooves, and sometimes you hear something that sounds like Soca on a Calypso record. So if you get to know some of the big artists in Calypso, then you start to get a vibe for what's possible. So one of the main people in Calypso on top of the scene for, say, 40 years was Lord Kitchener. And he used to do all these songs with double meanings. What they called smut music. And super talented and super grooving. And, the whole steel band movement was really a phenomenon, too, because for a while in Trinidad, drums were banned by the British because they were afraid that the people would revolt.
Wow.
Playing drums. So they started banging on whatever was around. And Ellie Manette, who just passed away a year ago, was one of the people to discover that when you hit an oil drum in two different spots, if it's dented a certain way, you get two different pitches. And he thought, maybe I could tune this. So he, fast forward, you have Calypso steel bands playing in Carnival. They play in concert halls. They can play complete symphonic works, pretty much anything.
Right.
Swing doesn't really translate so much, because you don't really have walking bass on pans, but everything else, and you've got these finely crafted instruments, So Ellie was one of the first ones to get the modern steel band together and train people to do it. So he's got a lot of disciples who make bands.
And now every major university has a steel band as well.
And around the world. They do in Japan and Switzerland and everywhere. So anyway, one of the rhythms that's most common, for Calypso, so almost like a go-to Calypso groove, would be something like this. Okay, so that's one of many things happening at the same time. They often play congas, two congas with mallets, because it's easier to play that way than, mess up your hands. So the pattern you hear is quite often and there's some other what they call scratchers, which is basically like a metal ouida. It sounds like a real loose ride cymbal.
Right.
And then they have this thing that they call the iron, and it's actually a brake drum.
Okay.
A metal brake drum that's played with 2 triangle beaters. And the funny thing about the brake drum, the iron, is that when you're up close to it, you can hardly hear it in the whole percussion section. But if you go out there, it's dominating the mix.
Wow.
Just these little
That's
triangle beaters.
Huh.
Yeah. So collectively, the percussion section, and there's people playing cowbells and different things, but collectively, the whole percussion section, aside from the steel bands, is called the engine room. So that's the idea. It's got this engine of the whole thing. And when steel bands perform, they memorize all the arrangements because it's quite often they're playing outside and there's no room for music stands and there's too much to carry and all that. So there are 2 people that know the entire arrangement down, and that is the arranger and the drummer, because the drummer has to rehearse with all the sections to learn each part of the arrangement.
Wow.
And they rehearse for months. So they and I worked with the Trinidad All-Stars, and I swear, I was looking at this girl playing bass pan, and she was just nailing her part, like almost like doing it in her sleep. And then for a second, her eyes gazed on me for a second, and then I felt like I was looking at an alien, like a machine, like whoop, whoop, just nailing the part, like nothing could get in the way. So she was like deep in the meditation of that. So I think that's what it is. And it's a real kind of community thing. There are a lot of people that do regular jobs during the day or go to school, and then they devote themselves to the steel band at night. Anyway, so not to get too far into the history and all that, but now a couple of things, modifications I've made if I've been playing without a percussionist is to do this on one hand and then throw in a few things on the snare. So that's the kind of stuff I started incorporating when I was playing with Andy Narell, Dave Samuels, and Paquito de Rivera in the Caribbean Jazz Project, because there was no budget for a percussionist on the gig. Or there would be a session and there would be Luis Conte or Bernard Saturnino or a couple of other percussionists worked with us. So I tried to find ways to fill it up a little bit just to get that thing. Now the intro phrase that I played, that's very common in Caribbean music. It's called the cinquillo, like cinco being 5, cinquillo. It's kind of a rhythmic cell. Da 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 da. If you play it totally straight as written, da 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 da. But you can start to stretch it out a little bit. Da 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 da.
Right.
And you'll notice in a lot of Caribbean styles that the vocal phrasing is often phrasing almost in 5. So there's a real relationship to 5. And it's pretty amazing. I was just looking at a YouTube video of rah-rah music from Haiti. They have these long tubes they're blowing through and tapping on.
Right.
And there's a percussionist playing. It sounded like it's like 5 morphing in and out to that cinquillo.
Yeah.
It'll freak you out if you haven't heard it.
Are those the kids that are kind of like on a dirt road?
Yeah.
On the side of the fence with like a mountain top?
Exactly.
Yes.
That's the one. That's the one.
I've seen that.
Yeah. It's amazing. So the cinquillo shows up in a lot of French Caribbean rhythms, like Begin. Well, I need a floor tom for this, but you can also play it like this. So that's how it actually started out before they started playing floor tom. and they cross over to play the floor tom usually.
Huh.
And the first note is muted, and the rest
Let me
are
get a
open.
floor tom just so we can hear that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, it's kind of low. Is that okay?
Cool. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so this style is called Begin. It's from Martinique.
Wow.
Yeah, and that
That
comes
is
from a
just-
whole different set of percussion instruments, including like a djembe kind of drum called the tibois, and the way they play on that solo, you can hear it in sort of different dimensions. It's really freaky when you hear it.
Wow.
So yeah, I've used some of these rhythms, kind of slipped them into different things just to see how they would work, and sometimes they work in like a pop context. That's the nice thing about all these rhythms, because they're kind of related to what
Yeah.
the current pop scene is. Yeah.
And they're playing it on a floor tom, or are they playing it on a drum on its own? Is it a
Well,
drum
if
set
it's
part?
a drum set, if it's a drum set player, they'll play it on the floor tom. But if it's just percussion, there's somebody playing a block, and then a djembe type drum.
Oh, djembe,
And then a shekere, but twisted like that.
Right.
Held. The beats held and twisted.
Kinda like
More like a
kabasa
kabasa.
style,
Yeah. So moving on to...
That's super advanced. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not your normal, calypso, soca kind of... Even a soca seems like it's an easy groove. I mean,
Right.
it's something that we maybe take for granted. We kind of kind of do a version of it in pop music.
Right. Sort of like a... like that. And there's also a kind of soca where the bass drum's not on the beat all the time. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and that's kind of cool. Yeah, there was a name for that, and I'm spacing out. I can't remember what it was, but I've used that. I got to play with Andy in the context with somebody who studied with Lord Kitchener for many years. His name is Relator. Used to be called Lord Relator, but Relator. And this guy is amazing. He can make up verses on the spot with a punchline, and just about any subject. Sometimes he asks the audience, "Give me a topic," and they'll say whatever, and he'll just come up with something really funny. And he was trying to explain how to do it. He just said, "You got to attack." Just go for it.
Right. Like the freestyle rappers who are
Exactly,
just able to
exactly.
just go. Yeah.
That's
incredible.
Just amazing.
Yes.
To have that thing.
Wow, because so the I mean, you hear that in songo sometimes, right? With the bass part,
Sometimes
go,
timba.
Go, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
timba.
Yeah. The timba thing is like more. It's more. Everything's more displaced. You don't have like a standard montuno. You don't have a standard bass line.
Okay.
You might have cascada and clave and stuff like that, but everything else on the kick and snare is going to be all over the place in a good way.
In a good way, right?
Like just as funky as you can make it, and then multiply that by.
Yeah.
But always in clave.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But so if there's somebody who doesn't really know any Afro-Cuban basics, I mean, really all that songo and timba music was largely based on the influence of David Garibaldi and Tower Power and that kind of thing in Cuba. So, one of the early recordings of Los Van Van, in one of those early recordings, Changuito, the great drummer, who later became the timbale player, was playing something like the... It would be 2 toms, but just doing that. So you can hear that. It sort of sounds like Tower of Power.
Right, yeah.
But then you can hear.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And so when you actually, you know, when you see it in a book, it's like. But that's only like a snapshot of what it actually was.
Right.
You can hear him putting it in different places and playing it differently for each tune.
Yeah.
And in Los Van Van, the leader was the bass player, so a lot of the songs were based on the bass line. If you listen to each tune, you can hear that's the whole thing. And so it was always, when he was playing traps, he was always experimenting. And really, the person that was holding it down was the Guido player. So sometimes when I play songo without a Guido player, I try to get that feeling by playing. So really, I'm not playing anything different than like funk, but kind of broken up here.
Right.
But with a clave in mind.
Yeah.
Like there's certain things I wouldn't do because they might sound like I'm turning the clave around.
And kind of avoiding one a little bit with the bass drum.
Yeah, yeah. And so the bass drum part is in songo and timba, it's much freer because the bass line is not necessarily tied to like a standard tumbao.
Mm-hmm.
But there may be a tumbao. Mm-hmm. It just depends on the tune.
Right.
So, you know, like as we said before, the paper don't swing.
Right.
And we just have to take it case by case and listen to different tunes. I mean, the first time I recorded, first time I recorded a songo groove was on Paquito's record called Reunion, and the tune was Reunion. And I was playing... because I didn't know any better.
Right. The
but it worked.
Right.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah.
And, you know, Giovanni was on the session, and Danilo Perez was on the session.
And they were fine with it?
It was cool.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah. Wow.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
God,
But-
those things are so closely related. It's just amazing.
Oh, yeah.
To my ear, I'm hearing things. I mean, I feel like I wouldn't be able to like, I feel like a lot of the things that you played would all work. But do they? I mean, are
Yeah,
there
it just
rules
depends on
for
the music. Just depends on the
Yeah.
music. Like if you decide, okay, I'm going to play this Los Van Van tune, then you have to figure, okay, is it more loose, improvisational, more like the early 70s, or is it more timbali based,
Yeah.
where he's playing the cascara and then throwing in this and that?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, for students, if you know Afro-Cuban basics, I think that's for son or mambo or salsa, whatever you want to call it. Basically, the right-hand parts are kind of the most important for us. And they all come from timbales or congas or cowbell parts. So you have the cascara, and a lot of people don't know this, but the cascara can be played on hi-hat as well, or the side of the floor tom. I always ask before I play the side
Yeah, I
of the
bet
floor
it sounds cool in that drum, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
Like a pan.
Yeah, why not? But I think it's important to know why we play these patterns. Why is the cascara played? The cascara is played to leave space for the other stuff happening in the music, like vocals, bass solos, piano solos, something softer that needs space. You're not going to play a cowbell on a piano solo necessarily, unless it's, you know, super aggressive. So, you know, maybe someone will. But in a typical arrangement, you wouldn't. You'd play the cascara maybe on the hi-hat if you're a drummer, and you can actually fill it in. You know, put a couple of extra notes in there if you want to. So that provides a nice foundation for the music. Now, when the chorus is happening, or a more exciting soloist, I wouldn't say exciting, but like just something that's more high-level
intensity,
volume,
yeah,
trumpet
right.
solo or something like that. That's when the bells are happening. So the timbali bell pattern, if I'm talking about 2/3 clave, which I've just If I play the bell pattern from the timbales, it would be. Now, if you notice, I just EQ'd that pattern. Mm-hmm. I don't use the tip. I mean, on this cymbal sounds not bad, it sounds pretty good. But I use somewhere along here for the sound, and I play it in the exact place. I don't move it. Because I want it to sound like a timbale stick hitting the top of a bell. Mm-hmm. Ding, 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 ding. It's not like goon, goon, ding, 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 ding. Right. That's another pattern.
Yeah.
So the handbell pattern played by the bongo player on the choruses, it's gong, ging, gong, tiki, don, tiki, don, tiki, don. So it's like two different sounds, like the opposite ends of the bell, a handbell with no hardware on it. So I rarely play it on the cymbal bell, but if I do, I strike the same exact spot all the time on the bell, and I use two different parts of the stick, the thicker and the thinner. So it's like. But again, that doesn't happen very much because I usually have a cowbell, and quite often I'll mount it here and I'll turn the stick around and play it like this so I can get that ging sound on the other end instead of just playing it with a stick, because sometimes the tip sounds a little weak on the center of the bell, so I just turn it around. Boom, beam, boom, tiki, don. I like having it mounted there because it's really convenient. Right. But sometimes I mount it over here too. So I mean, everybody puts it every place. Mm-hmm. Like some of the Cuban drummers playing timba, they have a whole timbale set over here, and they have bells and blocks over here, play cascara, and then interspersing some funky backbeats and bass drum. It all depends on the arrangement. So if you know the cascara, the mambo bell or timbale bell, and the hand bell or bongo bell patterns, then that's a lot, because those are really the essential patterns. Everything else is kind of icing on the cake. So if you play cascara with clave, that's cool, or you can just go. No one has to play the clave. It's implied in the part. But if you want to play it, that's cool too. But, I always adjust according to who's on the gig. Like I had a funny experience last year. In November, I did a concert. Bobby Allende called me for a concert with Eddie Palmieri, Sheila E., and Tito Rojas. And none of them showed up to the rehearsal. But it was a Christopher McBride big band. So Christopher McBride was rehearsing us. We were just going through the charts. So I was playing everything at the rehearsal, and then a little less at the sound check because some of them were there. And then all of a sudden an extra percussionist shows up. So I'm just playing the hat the whole night, Right. Because they've got it all covered. Yeah. So that's another consideration. You really have to, give people their space.
Yeah. Super important.
Yeah. And then they're happy. Like Amadito Valdez, he was from the Buena Vista Social Club, and we did some concerts together, and we wound up playing together a little bit, and he plays timbales, and I swear, he played the least notes of any percussionist I've ever heard, and people were going absolutely crazy. Something about the way he played, like interspersing that 6/8 feel and 4/4, just drove people crazy in a good way. And so I wasn't going to try to play the same thing as him. I avoided playing cascade, I avoided playing the bell patterns. I just played like something funky on the hat, and it worked, And then that goes back to what Paquito said, just play something that works. Like we were on a session together, and I couldn't really hear the clave in the arrangement, the clave direction, so I wasn't sure which way to go. And so I asked the arranger, Carlos Francetti, I can't hear the clave in this. What clave is this in? He said, I don't know anything about that. I'm from Argentina. Go ask Paquito. He says, Paquito, I can't hear the clave. What do you think? He said, Coño, just play something that works. And I thought, clave neutral.
Clave neutral.
So if you don't know what the clave direction is, It's kind of the equivalent of. It's like you're not giving it up until you hear it, until you really hear it in the music. So you can play a whole tune like that. And you can still make people dance.
Yeah.
Even if you're not playing clave, so clave neutral.
Right. Wow.
Somehow it works.
So great.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of other grooves we can go over, but we'll be here all day.
Yeah, I know.
I don't want you to miss your gig.
It's unending.
Yeah.
It's unending.
Yeah.
It's just amazing that you've mastered so many of them. Like you've been put in the position where you've not had to learn them, but you've had the opportunity to spend your time really going down a lot of rabbit holes and learning all these different cultures' music, which is, it's kind of a luxury in a way, and it's also kind of just amazing. It's turned into a whole career for you.
I guess it has. I mean, one thing is I really love the music. You know, for the most part, I listen to it and really enjoy it, and I really love the different feels you can get.
Yeah.
That just are not found in certain types of music.
Right.
You know, it's like we were talking about that guitarist playing a certain way in the shuffle. Like in Festejo, for example, from Peru, you have something like. How can you transcribe that?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you could write it out in 12/8, or you can write it out in eighths and sixteenths and just say lay back. But you know,
Right.
if you hear the music, then you hear how everything goes together. So that's what I'm hearing in my head.
Yeah.
But I was in a situation where I really had to do it. So that's why I got it together as quickly as I could.
Right.
But yeah, I've had my times where I've fallen on my face, you know, playing certain grooves.
Now, I mean, obviously there are guys in each of these countries that play drum set, and they do it really well, and they can play those styles. Why do you think you're the one getting called for a lot of gigs that someone that's actually from a country, would get it?
Well, you know, there's a lot of factors. I mean, maybe I can read better, or maybe I'm closer to the person who's hiring me, or closer to the gig, or maybe I have more experience in more different styles than they do. But you know, chances are things are less expensive down there, so they'll be cheaper.
They're cheaper, right. But I mean, your network, your relationships, all these things that are so important for a professional career.
Right.
I mean, it just all kind of builds on itself, right? You build your relationships. You're cool. You're professional. You can read. You can do the thing.
You show up.
Right. And,
I try.
And I mean, when you were in Chicago, Howard Levy is the one that brought you into Paquito's thing, right?
Right.
He was playing piano with Paquito at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that was a relationship that moved into another relationship, and
Exactly.
it keeps growing.
Yeah, and you just everybody loves music and loves to play and loves to get together, and there's going to be some time where a person that you really look up to or idolize is not going to be able to make it, so just be ready to step in, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and now that's happening with my students. Like they're starting to work with Paquito and different people, and you know, stealing my gigs, so to speak. But that's great.
Do you feel like you had to leave Chicago, or what was that decision based on, to go to New York first? Is that where you went first?
I went to New York and lived there for about 10 years. I think I just wanted to see what it was like. And also, I had met Michel Camilo backstage in 1989, because I was playing there with Paquito. And I said, "Oh, Michel, I love your music. I'd love to play with you sometime." He said, "Yeah, move to New York and we'll do some playing." And that kind of planted a seed in my head. And actually, when I got there, I didn't know how to get in touch with him. And I looked on the back of the CD, and there was a phone number on there. So I called him up. And he sent me some charts. And then next thing you know, El Negro got the gig with Santana, and he called me. So, you know, I can't say I was totally ready for it, but it was a great experience.
Yeah.
And Paquito was totally cool. He let me out of a tour, and Antonio Sanchez subbed for me.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. He's a Berkeley kid, right? I mean, he went
Antonio?
to Berkeley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was amazing then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came from like a real fusion rock kind of background, too.
Mm-hmm.
But really got the jazz thing happening.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So, you moved to New York just because you were interested in another picture of the scene.
Yeah, I was just I was thinking, I had gotten a taste of touring with Paquito and Lyle Mays. Mark Johnson was on it, and I wanted to get into that world. And I immediately got busy with Caribbean Jazz Project on the road and gigs around town, like Brazilian gigs. There were a few sessions, but when you're on the road a lot, they call you once, they call you twice, and then they stop calling. But I did a few things. I was also working with this singer named Linda Eder, who's a totally different bag. But we were doing some concerts around, and they got me on some records, and it was fun. There's some big band stuff.
And then you moved to Boston because of Berkeley?
Yeah, so I got the gig in Berkeley in 2001, and in 2005, we moved up to Natick, Massachusetts. I kind of got tired of the commute from New Jersey, going all that way. But also I was traveling a lot more at the time, and I was always up at school doing makeup, so I figured, okay, why not be closer to there and just, be closer to the school so I can just go in whenever I need to.
Right.
So yeah, it's nice being up there. There's a lot of interesting things going on, a lot of great players, and a lot of opportunities through Berkeley to play.
Right. Yeah.
And record.
Yeah.
So I just got a recording grant, faculty recording grant. So
Oh, cool.
I'm working on a big band record.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. So you're writing. That's what you're writing for right now. Is
I'm
this
trying.
big band record?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And will you use who will you use for the big band?
I've already done a couple of sessions, and it's been different players all the time. But basically, I'm using Greg Hopkins, great trumpet player and arranger, to contract the band.
Okay.
So last couple of sessions, we got a great band together, and different rhythm sections, but it's all great players.
Boston guys or New
Yeah.
York guys coming up?
Yeah.
Boston guys.
But I hope to get a couple of guests on there. I just did a gig in France, and Jerry Goodman was on it.
Oh, wow.
And he said, yeah, man, just let me know. I'll play on your stuff. So I'm thinking, okay, great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And, some other people I have in mind. We'll see what happens.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Man, this has been awesome.
It has.
It's been so
it
cool.
Has. It's been a really amazing
Yeah.
4 days.
I think I'm going to be sad when I wake up tomorrow and you're not here.
I know.
It's like I'm so used to it. I'm so used to seeing you in the morning all the way until almost the evening.
Well, the nice thing is I'll be back soon.
Yeah, you'll be back in February.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put... This is going to be a long podcast and video series. I don't know how I'm going to release it, but
yeah.
I want to make sure that I put a bunch of links in so people can go to all your places.
That's good. Yeah.
And hear different records, and I'll go back and try to capture all the names that you've mentioned and try to create links to all that stuff.
Cool.
Because, man, I mean, tons of names that I haven't heard that I want to dive into and hear these things.
And you know what I can do? I can compile a list of links for the different styles that I talked about.
Yeah.
So that
would be awesome.
Yeah, because there's some people I didn't mention
Mm-hmm.
that I had experience with, and
Cool.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know this isn't the last time that we'll hang.
That's
sure.
right. That's right. I'm
We've
going to be a regular here.
We just started. I know, right? Yeah, it's great. And man, I totally forgot to mention that Howard Levy lives 3 blocks from here.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And he was playing last night.
Really?
Not that you would have been able to
Yeah,
go. But
yeah,
he was
yeah.
playing in Evanston.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's doing his holiday Hanukkah thing.
Oh man, that's great.
So next time you're in, if you can come up, we can call Howard.
Absolutely.
And have him come down and
That would be great.
go have lunch or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping he'll sit in again.
I'm sure he will.
You know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be interesting having Ernie on the gig. Ernie
What's your-
Denoff.
Oh, Ernie. Oh, Ernie's playing. Oh,
yeah.
nice.
So I'm
Great.
going to rearrange the music for,
Oh, cool.
guitar as well as...
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to try to blend him with the horns, but like unisons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he's
Great.
such a great player.
Yeah, I love Ernie.
We got a history.
I'm sure you do. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It's been the best experience.
It has.
Yeah, man.
It's been so nice. So inspiring and enriching.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All
And I don't
right.
think I've ever practiced so hard on 2 minutes of music in my life.
That was historic.
Yeah.
Hope it comes out all right.